Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is Michelle, and who's here with me?
It's JD.
It's JD.
Woohoo!
It's always JD, and it's always Michelle.
That's correct.
And it's always you, dear
Always.
listener. Yeah, always. I mean, maybe not you in particular, but you as like an entity of multiple people who sometimes listen to the episodes and sometimes do not. You as the collective.
The royal you.
The royal you. Yes, you are a queen if you are listening to us, and you deserve a crown. If it's your first time tuning in, hello, we watch Shudder. It's in the fucking name. But if you're here because
so
you're
aggressive.
you're like, man, I love Monster House, and I bet I would love my kids to listen to this episode about Monster House in our minivan on the way to dropping them off at preschool. We're not a fucking children's podcast. I'm just really hammering it in. I'm so sorry, you
Michelle,
guys.
why are you so aggressively anti-child right now? That's so weird.
I'm not, though. My friend gave birth today. So I'm actually like very pro children today.
Oh,
but she
are you?
did tell me she is definitely not naming the baby Romulus, and that's upsetting, but I'll still be friends with her, I guess.
Unacceptable, Michelle's
I know.
friend. If your child is not named Romulus, I don't remember why we recommended naming the child Romulus, but
Birth is voluntary chest bursting.
oh, right.
Yep. But
Yeah.
she said they didn't know the name yet, but it would definitely not be Romulus, is what she said.
Well,
So
that's
then again,
dumb.
she hadn't signed the paperwork last time I talked to her. This episode's going to come out in the future. Maybe by the time this episode drops, I'll have coerced my friend into naming her newborn Romulus.
You had a real solid opportunity there, person in the past, as we record from the past. I don't know how time works. Hey, you guys know we're recording this in August. I know it's October at least, October 2024 when you're listening, maybe even later. We obsessively have to remind people of that. Why? I don't know, because we get locked into gimmicks and we're still just really hobbyists and we like to be silly. And I have no idea where I'm going with this. Michelle, we're talking about Monster House. That's why you mentioned
we're going
Monster
to
House,
the Monster
right?
House.
Yeah,
Monster
doing
House.
them Spooktobers, one for the younger audiences. Do you have a good descripty script for this one? I don't think we really prepared.
Yeah, the IMDb one is totally fine.
Ooh, can I read it then if it's totally fine?
Yeah, go for it.
This is the IMDb description. Monster House, 2006, rated PG, 91 minutes. Good on you, Monster House, the 91. 3 teens discover that their neighbor's house is really a living, breathing, scary monster. Monster House. I think
Monster House.
when your movie is called Monster House and the poster shows the house looking like a monster, I think it's okay to tell them that the house is a monster. Michelle,
Exactly. Yeah.
you want to hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts about Monster House?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had never seen this one before. Came out in 2006, so I was in my cool teenage era and just couldn't be bothered with like a children's movie. I do like that this is a nightmare-inducing children's film. I'm a huge fan of movies that can get children into horror and also potentially therapy later on in life because they might be afraid of their neighbor's house. So love a good multi-purpose children's film that does both of those, and this does that pretty well. The animation of the Monster House, incredible. The animation of the children, terrifying and not in a good way. They had not figured out how faces should work. Though I did watch some stuff about how the animation was done with the mocap suits and stuff, so that was pretty cool, and we can get into that a bit. Story, fine. I'm not really the market audience for this, but I do think it would be good for people who do have younger children or just I don't know, I'd say young friends, but like younger friends have to be like, I'm in my 30s. So like young friends are still going to be in their 20s and they probably are already familiar with horror. So maybe I'll show Tristan, my youngest friend, this movie and see if it gives her the spookies. But I think it'd be good for somebody who's trying to get into horror without being too scary. Solid film. I have no complaints. I have no huge non-complaints. We'll go with a 3.
A 3 out of 5 skulls from Michelle for Monster House. The house that became a monster. Monster House.
Mm-hmm. Well, JD?
Yeah?
Would you like to hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts?
Yeah, I would, Michelle. I agree with a lot of what you had to say there. I think there's some really interesting animation going on here. I thought the animation of the house in particular was really interesting and well done. I agree with you about the faces being real. You could definitely tell this is a 2006 movie. Overall, I really appreciate the craft of it. I thought this movie was really mean to fat people, and that was really off-putting to me. Both the best friend and some other things that we'll get into. But I thought the movie was just really, unfortunately, mean to fat people in ways that, as a fat person myself, and even if I wasn't one, just felt kind of mean, and I don't like mean anymore. And so that kind of ruined the experience for me. As an experience, this was like a one skull situation for me. No, there was a point, Michelle, where I had to struggle to finish this because I was so turned off by where it was headed. It's really unfortunate.
That. Okay. Yeah. Well, because
I should clarify. I should clarify that as a production, I agree. This is like a 3 skull movie. But my experience was much less enjoyable.
Fair. We will talk about that in the spoiler section. Should we go ahead and head there?
We should. If you have never seen Monster House and you don't want it to be spoiled for you, this is where you want to stop listening, but make sure you come back after you saw it. I can't imagine a whole lot of people who haven't already seen Monster House going to be going out of their way to see Monster House, especially when Michelle was so fucking rude about parents right up top. Parents.
Just
breeders.
Parents.
Fucking breeders.
4 friends gave birth this month. I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Bless you and your children. I just understand I am not the kind of person who has any business being a parent. So.
Oh, yeah. I like other people's babies. I would hate my own baby.
You know what the best part about other people's babies is? They're other people's.
You can give them back.
They don't belong to you.
Temporary parenthood is the best. Highly recommended.
So, spoiler section on Monster House. Michelle, it's actually been, I want to say, 9 days since I watched this. And because my experience was so shoddy, I don't even really remember a lot outside the very basic details. So I'm really hoping that when you give us your plot summary here, it reawakens at least a little bit of conversational info for me. Please.
We'll find out.
Tell Jenna what happens in the movie.
Yeah, Jenna, who never watches the movie Jenna, she's going to be like, Monster House is actually my favorite movie.
What happens, Michelle, if, and look, God forbid, but this is also a horror movie podcast and she's a dear friend. What happens if Jenna dies before we get to release any of these?
Well, that's fine, because I am Ouija boarding that bitch and I am explaining to her the plot of Monster House. I am waking her up from her eternal slumber and I will have a transcript of the podcast and I will Ouija board it to her.
Love
and
it.
You know what? She would love it. She would love it.
Awesome.
She's like, thank God.
I hope you're not
ghosts,
dead,
they don't
Jenna.
even get they don't even get pen pals. Their parents don't write to them anymore. I'm sitting there Ouija boarding every single podcast episode to Jenna. I would make her feel very adored in the afterlife.
That's wonderful. So anyway, Jenna, whether you're dead or not, here's the plot summary. Michelle, what happens in this movie?
Yeah, okay, so the movie starts with Steve Buscemi, which is always a good thing. His name is Nevercracker, which is very silly. I don't know if I think it's his last name, but they just call him Nevercracker, and so I do like to think that he is like Cher, where he is only Nevercracker. He has no first or last name, he has only a name. And so Nippercracker, he lives in, you guessed it, a monster house, and he keeps trying to tell people stay off his fucking lawn. And the neighbor DJ, he suspects that the house across the road, that might be a monster house. Cause Nippercracker, he keeps stealing bikes and shit, and telling people to keep off the lawn, and he's like counting how many tricycles have gone missing, and he's like, you know what? I know a monster house when I see it. So he's gonna investigate. But first he has a babysitter come over, and the babysitter sucks. And she's all edgy and cool, and she's got a fucking boyfriend, and she doesn't play games. And then DJ's friend Chowder, who is actually my favorite character, which is what I want to talk about him a little bit more later. But Chowder comes over, and then they're both spying on the monster house. And then the babysitter's boyfriend, he's a dick to the children, so he leaves. And then this girl, Jenny, shows up, and she's selling candy bars, but then she's strikes a deal with the babysitter, and it turns out she's actually just very cunning. And so that whole situation happens. Eventually, Jenny, DJ, Chowder, they go over to figure out, is this definitely a monster house, or is it just a standard two-door with a foreboding aura to it? Is this just bad design?
I don't mean... I don't want to miss this point before we move on. Did you say two-door?
Tudor? Yes.
Yeah, that's tutor.
No, that's a teacher. That's
okay,
Tutor. You're confused.
Okay, continue. Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I
thought for a minute you were suggesting the house had two doors. I just needed to clarify. Anyway,
tutor.
Go ahead. They go to find out if it's really a monster house.
We need a compilation of all the words I've pronounced wrong on this show, and it would be an hour, and I would be Ouija boarding that to Jenna too. Rue Morgue, the start of it all. Okay, so DJ, Chowder, Jenny, they go over to the house to figure out, is it a monster house or is it a two-door house? Are there two doors to this house? Also, the monster house prank calls DJ, and that's pretty funny. Because then he calls it back, and he's like, I hear the phone ringing somehow. Like, that would be the loudest fucking phone in the world. Also, where are all of his neighbors? Because I feel like the only people who exist in this movie exist within DJ's world. And if that's not evidence to him that his life is a simulation, like all of our lives are a simulation, we are all the main character of our own reality, like that would give it away. If like the only people who exist interact with me, I never see a person just down the sidewalk, they all exist to further my plot along, I'd get pretty paranoid about it. Not that I've ever thought about this in depth before in my entire life. Not that I won a lot of Uno games in a row and then convinced myself it was a message that I was in a coma and I did need to wake up and I was willing my winning of Uno into existence. Anyway, I'm more medicated now and I'm fine. So DJ, Chowder, Jenny, they go to the house and then they find a woman in the basement in concrete and they're like, whoa, Mrs. Nippercracker. And then it turns out that Mrs. Nippercracker was at a circus and then she became the house. Okay, you guys, the house is Mrs. Nippercracker, and that is the monster house. And Nippercracker, this whole time, he hasn't been a dick. I mean, he's also been a dick, but he has been trying to keep people off his lawn so his wife does not eat them. And then he wants to burn down the house, and they stop him. And I can't remember how this movie ends. I'm realizing that now. I think it's a happy ending. Is the woman still a house? I guess none of us are going to know because like JD said, it's been a while since either of us saw it. And I remember all the really big exciting parts. The uvula, I remember the uvula. I have no fucking idea.
I remember
also, the cops get swallowed by the house. That's pretty cool.
I remember the uvula is going to be one of the greatest out of context quotes of my lifetime. I remember the uvula.
Forgot the Alamo, remembered the uvula.
Yeah, so of course the way this movie ends is the kids fix everything and the lady's spirit goes off to the afterlife and I
was gonna say it was just a generic like everything's
goes
happy
with her. And then they're returning all the stuff that Nippercracker stole and all that stuff. And
I was
this
gonna
big
say it was
happy
just
ending.
generic happy ending. Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty much
very
it.
anticlimactic.
Yep, that's that movie. Let's talk about Chowder. Here's first of all, his fucking name is Chowder. Give me a goddamn break, Dan Harmon, who wrote a decent amount of this. Like,
But also hates this movie now and says the director is a dick and he wants nothing to do with it.
well, that's fine, but I also
I'm just saying it's interesting. Yeah.
Sure. But that was the first thing, just like right off the bat. It's like, oh, there's a fat kid and he has a food name. I get it's 2006, but also it's fucking 2006. So that just immediately put me off. I know you said this was your favorite character. Tell me all about that and see if maybe you can change my mind about this a little bit.
I don't think I'm going to change your mind. I just thought he was very endearing and trying to be practical and convince DJ that the house was not a monster house, and then he gets showing up about that. Also, the kiss with Jenny, totally unearned. Of course, all movies back in 2006 that were for like preteen teenagers were going to have somebody kiss, but like would have been much happier with her winding up with nobody or else winding up with Chowder. I am pretty upset that she wound up with DJ. And I have strong, passionate feelings about that. Like, you don't have to always have a romantic interest in your movies, okay? God, you guys, back in 2006, stop it.
Yeah, like, why, like, I even totally understand, like, the whole angle of both DJ and, you know what, I'm not going to call him Chowder. His name is Charles. But with DJ and Charles both being into Jenny, like, I get that. But
Yeah,
I do
they're
agree.
teenage
I think
boys.
I think this would have been cooler if she was just like, I don't have time for any of this teenage boy nonsense. I don't,
Yeah.
just, and really embodied that, because she did come in as that, real sort of go-getter, independent, like female of the future, or however.
Exactly.
And then
She doesn't need either of them.
right, and it just turns into another, oh, there's the thing. I do agree with you. I mean, if I had been able to disconnect from my dislike of the mean fat stuff in this, I do think that Charles was the most interesting character out of those three. I connected with that character the most for a lot of obvious reasons. But Nevercracker's first name, by the way, at least according to Wikipedia, is Horace. Horace Nevercracker.
Whoa. Okay. You just unlocked so many memories. My grandma owned a flower shop. She lived above the flower shop in an apartment, and there was another apartment. When she bought the flower shop and apartment, the other guy stayed in as her tenant. His name was Horace, and he was mean as hell. So I immediately, like, he looked like Nevercracker. Whoa. Okay, sorry. I haven't thought about Horace in like 25 years. He died
Wow.
in a very crickety-crackety manner. But yeah, Jesus. Okay, Horace. Apparently all Horaces are just mean to little girls.
Including Horace, North Dakota. The entire town.
Definitely. Oh man, I
entire
spent so much
town.
time in Horace, North Dakota, but we don't have to get into that. I was 14.
no.
It was a rebellious time.
Oh, man. That's the only reason anybody goes to Horace, is it's a rebellious time. It's a problems time in your life. We don't need to insult Horace, North Dakota. It's a wonderful little town. No, it's not.
I
anyway.
have fond but strange
Complicated,
memories.
yes.
Okay. So yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
like Chowder, but I also, knowing that Jenny winds up with DJ and his character was problematic, that sways me more actually on your side, because Chowder was not the one that I had a problem with. I think I like endearing chubby nerds as the sidekick, and I'm used to that, and I didn't like Chowder. To me always makes me think of vomit, not of food, so I thought it was gross teenage nickname, not food related nickname. But yeah, you're totally right. He did have a food name, and the fact that he doesn't wind up with Jenny, bullshit. Also, she doesn't need either of them.
Well,
yeah,
and there's
okay.
I remember very specifically this moment where they're all like running away from the house, and they take a moment to have Charles stop and he's huffing and puffing. 'Cause get it, he's fat and he's out of shape and he can't run as fast as them. It's a fucking cartoon movie. We don't need to, like, completely unnecessary, I thought. Also, the overall plot gimmick of this, where the house is possessed by the spirit of a cliche sideshow, as they would have called it, a freak show, very obese lady. Right? And she's like kept in a cage and put on display. And she finally gets away. But then even no matter where she goes, people are making fun of her and cracking wise at her. And then she dies. And she becomes the bad guy. And she's not just the bad guy. She is a giant house that eats children. The fat lady is a house that eats children. Give me a fucking break. Man, I just found that whole thing, and I know somebody's going to be like, yeah, but the whole thing is about... No, it's not about her being liberated. It's about them saying, oh, hey, calm down. It's no big deal. They can't hurt you anymore. Like, the whole thing lets those assholes fucking, like, off the hook. Because it's just all about making her not so mad about being picked on for being a fat lady. And I thought that whole thing was just really tone deaf, and I didn't like it at all. And that's what really tore this down for me, especially when that's the gimmick on top of the Charles character. Right? Like, this is so... It's the same sort of thing like you and I discussed with Divinity. If there was one of... Well, if it had just been the Charles character, that's one thing. The gimmick of the whole thing is just a repulsive fat stereotype that I hated. And I can't get into this movie at all, and I can't recommend anybody see it. The more I talk about it, the more I think that 1 skull rating for my experience is very warranted.
I was on the house's side throughout the movie. I was definitely like pro like, yeah, eat those people who are mean to you.
Yeah, fuck them up.
Yeah, I was like, your backstory sucks, but like, I think I just looked at from the wrong perspective of like, yeah, you should eat those kids instead of like, somebody wrote this because they want to make fun of a lady. And as you talk about it, yeah, you're right. You were totally right.
Well, I mean, the house is the bad guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if this had been some sort of thing where, like, the kids find out the story behind the monster house in the first act, and it becomes sort of about them not fighting the house, but them joining with the house to maybe get a little vengeance, but also to do that same thing where she does get to heal a little bit from the awful. So, like, there's a way you could have done this that would have been so much better and so much more effective in my eyes. But instead, they just went for cheap fat jokes, and that's about the level of respect that I give back to it.
I 100% agree with you. I will also say that I did not fully 100% pay attention. I did kind of check out
I understand.
Bit, so
I understand.
This was not my thing where I'm like, I can see other people liking it. And now I'm like, oh, fuck, yeah, you're totally right. I just was not paying attention.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I also, frankly, like, the movie wasn't hooking me to begin with. I think because it is that mid-2000s animation where I'm like,
it's just so weird.
It just doesn't work. It's just a little too off. The quality is not quite there yet. And I just wasn't attaching to it. And so when it came to those parts, I was sort of like, oh, God, I got to start paying attention here. And so, like, those were sort of the major moments that I did catch on to. And it just made me sad. I don't think I need to say much more about it.
Yeah. I do.
Don't be mean, guys. Just don't be mean. You know, that's
unless you're
all.
Mean back to the people who are mean to you.
Yeah.
Like, if you become a house and you can eat the people who wronged you, do it. fucking
Absolutely.
do it.
You're the
Absolutely.
goddamn hero, and they're getting what they deserve.
Absolutely. I do need to talk about some of the voice actors in this.
Do it.
Mostly because DJ is voiced by Mitchell Musso. And Mitchell Musso, if you are not familiar, is from one of my shows that I would not admit was one of my favorite shows, Hannah Montana. And he played the best friend of Hannah Montana, the boy best friend. There was also a girl best friend because he had to have representation. So he was in that, and I had the biggest crush on Mitchell Musso when I was younger. Looking at his pictures now, obviously I'm an adult, but also like I'm looking at his hair and I'm like, that's the dumbest fucking hair I've seen, because back in the early 2000s, all the boys were doing the thing where it was crazy long and flipped out at the end. It was like a bob and it covered their ears, and it was so strange. High School Musical. Sorry, I was a Disney kid. High School Musical. Zac Efron did it. I never got it. It's the dumbest fucking hairstyle, and I hope it never comes back into fashion. But Mitchell Musso has my heart forever. Also, the cops. Very tropey, standard, like Kevin James likes donuts. We get it. But like the second voice sounded so familiar to me, and I had to go look it up. It's fucking Nick Cannon.
Yeah.
It's Nick Cannon.
I would like to point out also right away, not only is it a cop eating a donut, but it's a fat cop eating a donut. Hilarious. And I promise you, like, that's that I know that's all Dan Harmon shit. I have opinions on Dan Harmon. He's really well respected by a lot of people, and I'm not one of them.
Ooh.
Anyway.
Like, part of me wants to dive in, but part of me is also very scared. So maybe we just change the subject.
Yeah, that's probably
and talk about John Heater's character, who played video
John
games.
Who?
Heater.
Okay.
Napoleon Dynamite. That guy. I don't know how to pronounce words.
No,
yeah,
that's the right one. I just was having trouble placing the name, and then you said Napoleon Dynamite, and I was like,
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
So his character says he's just like your stereotypical like video game nerd, and when they walk up to him, he says something like, "You're making me want to throw up in a bag and eat it," and that's pretty gnarly, and I approved of that. That's about all I have to say. I just this movie also has like Catherine O'Hara and Fred Willard and Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's just like a really good voice acting cast, and the voice acting is great. I was looking at the behind the scenes, and it's cool because even though the animation looks like terrifying in a bad way, like they had not figured out characters, which is crazy because Shrek came out before this, and Shrek's animation was revolutionary. I'm not saying that in a joking way. Like, that movie is a masterpiece. We can get into it, or you can go watch some YouTube videos specifically about the sound design and how they use the same melody throughout in different ways to evoke different emotions, but still keep you familiar with the sound. Anyway, so they had Shrek, and then they had this, and this is such a like step down from Shrek. But it is pretty cool that when they were making this, they used mocap suits so that everybody was acting this out in a space, and they were seeing how their bodies moved. And the way that they had Nevercracker move then made him so much more disjointed. The way that they use like a stop motion type of animation. So they took like their real life animation, then made it like jittery. That's pretty cool. That's all. I think that's about it. I had very few things to say. But I did want to add like something.
No, that's cool. I'll be totally honest with you. I got sort of caught up in a Dan Harmon thought frenzy. I just sent you some stuff. We don't need to talk about it on the podcast. It's not important, but you'll understand once you see it why it's particularly problematic.
You've ranted at me about Dan Harmon before.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Yep, I remember this. Okay.
Anyway, so
if you want to know his issues, subscribe to our Patreon. That doesn't exist yet, but might by the time this video comes out.
You can read about my problems with Dan Harmon on his Wikipedia page, and if you've been following the show for even a little while, you'll know exactly what it is. But anyway, That's Monster House. I gave it a 1. Michelle gave it a 3. That's an average of 2. That's generous. Anyway, what's coming up next, Michelle? What are we talking about? I think it's tomorrow.
WNUF Halloween special tomorrow.
This was a pain in the ass to find, but I tell you what, if you ever need to find anything, you just ask Michelle. She will find it. She did find it.
I didn't search immediately, but I found it very quickly. And then I bought it because I am an ethical pirate. I just didn't want to wait for it to arrive in the mail. So I do have the Blu-ray coming, and I also paid for the special sleeve because I figured I would give a little bit extra profit because I had already watched the movie. I am very ethical in how I do my things. You're still going to get my money, but sometimes I don't want to wait.
I understand. I didn't want to wait either. And exactly. They still haven't gotten my money yet.
I paid enough for that Blu-ray for both of us.
That's fair. I think that's just fine. Anyway, guys, tune in tomorrow. WNUF Halloween special. You may have heard of it. I only heard of it recently. We'll talk about it on that episode. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
For more horror content, visit WeWatchShudder.com, where you'll find our world-famous, patent-pending Ghoul blog and Squelch files, as well as a schedule of upcoming episodes. Find us on social media at WeWatchShudder on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I guess Twitter, if you're still doing that for whatever reason. You can email us. mail@WeWatchShudder.com is the address. mail@WeWatchShudder.com. You can even call and leave us a voicemail, 701-566-9510. No, really, 701-566-9510. Give it a shot, see what happens. We Watch Shudder is a production of Rat Factory Media.